The lobster-tailed pot helmet, also known as the zischagge, horseman's pot and harquebusier's pot, was a type of post-Renaissance combat helmet. It became popular in Europe, especially for cavalry and officers from c. 1600. It was derived from an Ottoman Turkish helmet type. The helmet gradually fell out of use in most of Europe in the late 17th century. However, the Austrian heavy cavalry retained it for some campaigns as late as the 1780s. The French term capeline was also used for this helmet. However, usage of this word was not precise. Capeline was indiscriminately used to denote various types of hat and helmets other than the lobster-tailed pot. Origin. The lobster-tailed pot helmet had an Oriental origin, being derived from the Ottoman Turkish zischagge helmet, which developed in the 16th century. It was adopted by the Christian states of Europe in the early 17th century. The zischagge was almost identical to the later European helmets. It had a forward-projecting peaked sliding bar nasal, cheekpieces and neck guard. Only its tendency to have a conical rather than rounded skull was distinctive. The European derivative of this helmet saw widespread use during the 30 Years' War, when it became known as the zischagge, a Germanization of the original Turkish name. Characteristics. The lobster-tailed pot had a rounded skull piece, which was sometimes fluted. The skulls of English-made helmets were usually formed from two sections, joined by a raised comb running from front to back. The skulls of helmets manufactured on the continent were most often raised from a single piece of metal. Cheekpieces, commonly made in one piece but occasionally articulated, were attached to the skull by leather strapping. However, the better quality examples are sometimes hinged. To protect the face, there was either a fixed forward-projecting peak that incorporated a sliding nasal bar retained by a large screw, or a hinged peak with 3 attached bars. Finally, the helmet had a laminated defense to protect the back of the head and neck that was said to resemble the tail of a lobster. Another common name for the helmet was the harquebusier's pot. The harquebusier being the most common type of cavalry in Western Europe during the 17th century. The single nasal bar type was characteristic of continental Europe, whilst the 3-bar type with a pivoting peak was more widely used in the British Isles. Many European-made lobster-tailed pot helmets were later imported to Britain during the English Civil War. Occasionally, older helmets like the Burgonet or Sallet were modified to resemble the lobster pot. As stated by General George Monk in 1644, the headpiece with 3 small bars was intended to be pistol-proof. Decoration and appearance. The appearance and finish of lobster-tailed pots varied greatly, from the highly decorated, superb quality examples made for individual commanders down to crudely executed, munition-quality types, which were mass-produced to equip large numbers of ordinary cavalry troopers. High-quality helmets could be decorated using a range of techniques, including repoussé, engraving and blue and gilt finishes. An extant helmet made for King James II of England had the 3-bar face defence replaced by a pierced openwork plate depicting the full royal arms of England, sight being afforded by spaces within the design. Many helmets were blackened or browned as a treatment to weatherproof them and protect against rust. The better quality helmets given this treatment would often have had the somber appearance relieved by the use of numerous gilded rivet heads. Some of the most flamboyantly decorated helmets were produced for the Polish winged hussars, with metal crests and enlarged decoratively shaped nasals being not uncommon. A number of extant helmets have tubular plume holders attached. This, taken with the evidence of contemporary illustrations, indicates the use of feather plumes. This form of helmet was widely used during the 30 Years' War and English Civil War. It was commonly known as a zischagge in Germany and a horseman's pot or three-barred pot in Britain. The term lobster-tailed pot is widely used in modern scholarship. The typical cavalryman of the period, the harquebusier, would have worn the helmet with a buff coat, bridle, hand gauntlet and breastplate and backplate. It was also sometimes worn by a more heavily armored type of cavalry, the cuirassier, combined with three-quarter armor. It was used by cavalry on both sides of the English Civil War, including Oliver Cromwell's Ironside cavalry. The common misconception of cavaliers wearing plumed wide-brimmed hats whilst the Roundheads wore helmets is eloquently disproved by a surviving order signed by Charles I himself for 33 pots, along with other cavalry armor, for the use of his own troop of horse in 1642. Another order, this time from the parliamentarian authorities, dating to 1644 for 300 pots with 3 bars English, indicates that each helmet, no doubt of basic quality, cost 7 shillings. Similar helmets were worn in the 17th century by Polish winged hussars and were termed zischagge in Polish, again a derivative of the original Turkish name. Austrian cuirassiers were equipped with the lobster-tailed pot helmet as late as the 1780s, long after its use had died out elsewhere. When campaigning against the Ottoman Turks, gallery.